They say the forest forgets nothing, not the rustle of a dying leaf, not the blood spilled in silence, and certainly not the cry of a cub who lost his mother beneath the snow-covered pines. On a cold November morning, as frost clung to the birch trees and the wind howled like a warning, she heard it, a sound no one could ignore. A single sharp gunshot, then nothing, just silence. But silence in the wild isn't peace. It's a scream without a voice. She didn't know it yet, but that was the day her life, and his, would be rewritten. The mountains behind her cabin were quiet that time of year. Most hikers were long gone. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath through winter. But when Eleanor heard that crack echo off the cliffs, she froze. Not because of fear, but recognition. That was no hunter's shot. It was too close, too desperate. She grabbed her coat and rifle and stepped into the snow, her breath visible in the cold. It didn't take long. Half a mile into the pines, she saw it, a pool of red staining the white snow. A large female bear lay still, her fur matted and her body too big to have died quickly. But next to her, something moved. Tiny, trembling, barely alive. A cub, maybe 4 weeks old, eyes still wide with confusion. He nudged at the mother's belly, trying to wake her, letting out a soft, desperate whimper. Eleanor knelt slowly, heart pounding. She didn't speak. She just looked. And the cub looked back, not afraid, just waiting for something he couldn't name. She wrapped him in her coat. He didn't resist. As she turned to leave, she whispered, not to him, but to the silent forest, "I'm sorry." The snowstorm arrived that night, heavy and relentless, as if the sky itself wanted to seal away the memory of the mother bear forever. Eleanor's cabin was old, but sturdy. Logs thick with age, a fireplace that never stopped sighing. The kind of place that smelled of pine smoke, old coffee, and stories no one ever told aloud. She laid the cub on a wool blanket beside the stove. He was so small, his paws barely the size of her thumb. His breath came in tiny bursts, like he wasn't sure the world would let him keep it. For days, she barely slept. She warmed goat's milk with honey, fed him with a cloth-wrapped spoon. When he whimpered, she hummed the same lullaby she used to sing to her son, the one who never made it past his first winter. She didn't name the cub. Somehow, giving him a name would have made it harder, more human. But in her mind, she called him Ash, because he came from fire and from something burned down. Weeks passed. Ash learned the sound of her boots, the scratch of her pen, the way her hand trembled whenever she reached to touch him, like she didn't trust herself with something so alive. One night, as wind screamed outside and snow buried the world in white, he climbed into her lap and simply stayed. His head rested on her chest. His heartbeat met hers, and in that stillness she whispered, "You weren't supposed to be here, but maybe neither was I." Spring came slow that year. The snow melted in size, not floods. Buds opened shyly, one by one, and Ash had grown, no longer the trembling cub who fit in her arms. He was strong now, a shadow moving through trees, a heartbeat pulsing just beneath wildness. Eleanor built a pen behind the cabin, but he didn't need it. He never strayed far. He'd chase butterflies, roll in muddy streams, come home soaked and clumsy, then curl up by the stove like a sleepy dog. She laughed more in those days than she had in years, and sometimes, when he looked at her, really looked, she saw something both ancient and innocent, a soul halfway between beast and boy. But wild things don't ask for permission to change. One morning, she stepped outside with a bowl of apples, his favorite, and found the gate open. No paw prints, no broken fence, just gone. She called, waited, walked the forest for hours. Nothing, only silence. The same kind that followed that first gunshot, only colder now. That night, she left the apples outside, and the next, until they rotted where they sat. She never cried, not loudly, not once. But the next time a storm rolled in, she caught herself setting a second blanket by the fire and paused. Looking down at the empty floor, she whispered, "Don't you dare come back just to leave again." Years passed. Seasons came and went like tired visitors. Eleanor stopped putting apples out. She stopped walking into the woods without reason. Life grew small again, quiet, predictable, until one winter morning when everything changed. She woke to the sound of creaking wood, not inside, but outside, as if something heavy had passed by the porch. Snow had fallen again overnight, soft and fresh. She opened the door and froze. Footprints, huge ones, not boots, not human. Paw prints, wide, deep, circling the cabin once before vanishing into the trees. But they weren't ashes. She would have known his. His paws had a slight asymmetry. He'd once injured a toe playing near the creek. She remembered every detail. These were perfect, heavy, adult, and curious. Something had come, and not just passed by. It had watched. Walked slowly, deliberately. She followed the tracks with her eyes until they disappeared behind the pines. For the first time in years, her hands trembled, but not from fear, from memory, because in the center of that final print was a single, dark hair, long, coarse, female. She knelt, picked it up, held it in her palm. The wind blew through the trees, and somewhere deep in the forest, something moved. She stood up slowly and whispered, "I think I know who you are." She didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made her pulse race. Every groan of the trees, every rustle of wind. But nothing came. No more tracks, no more signs. Until the third morning. It was early. The light was still blue and quiet. Eleanor opened the curtains, and there she was, standing just beyond the edge of the woods. A bear, massive, still, eyes locked on the cabin. Eleanor didn't move. Neither did the bear. It wasn't Ash. She knew that instantly. This one had broader shoulders, older eyes. A thick scar ran down the side of her muzzle. A survivor. But it wasn't just size or age. It was something in the way she watched. Not like a predator. Not even like a stranger. Like someone waiting for something to be understood. Eleanor stepped outside slowly, hands visible, heart hammering. The bear didn't move. She walked halfway to the trees, stopped, met her gaze. And in that frozen moment, something flickered. Recognition. Not of the woman, but of what she'd done. Because this wasn't just a mother bear. This was the mate of the one Eleanor had found years ago. And now, she had come to stand where her cub had once been taken from her. Not in anger, not in violence, but in presence. A reckoning. Eleanor didn't speak, didn't beg. She only placed her hand over her heart and nodded once. The bear turned, walked back into the forest. But something in Eleanor had changed. Because those weren't just the eyes of a bear. They were the eyes of a mother who remembered everything. After that morning, Eleanor stopped pretending life was normal. She didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? The town already thought she was the bear woman, the widow who spoke more to trees than to people. But every night she heard it. Not footsteps, breathing, heavy, measured. always just beyond the reach of light. The bear was still there, not haunting her, not threatening her, just watching. Then came the dreams. At first, flashes, fur, snow, a cub crying in the dark. Then clearer, her own hands lifting Ash. The mother, collapsed and still warm. Only this time, in the dream, the mother's eyes opened and stared at her. Eleanor woke up gasping. For weeks, her thoughts unraveled. What if the bear had seen her take the cub? What if the forest remembered more than she thought? She returned to the clearing where she'd found Ash all those years ago. The snow was thinner now, revealing the earth beneath, the past beneath. And that's when she saw it. A den, half collapsed, old, but once used, and carved into the bark of a nearby tree, deep claw marks, not random, not wild, a pattern, 4 long slashes, and 1 short one, almost hesitant. The same number of years since Ash had left. Her breath caught. Not everything the wild does is instinct. Some things are intention, memory, grief. She stood there for a long time, the wind pulling at her coat, her hair. Then she whispered, to no one and to everything. I didn't steal him. I saved him. I loved him. The forest didn't answer, but somewhere behind the trees, something listened. It was the first thaw of the season. The snow melted in quiet drips from the roof, the sky soft with golden clouds. Eleanor sat on her porch, wrapped in her old flannel shawl, staring into the trees like she had every morning since the tracks appeared. But that day, something was different. The birds stopped singing, not out of fear, out of reverence. The wind stilled, as if the world was holding its breath. And then, from between 2 pine trunks, he stepped out. Massive, powerful. A full-grown bear with fur the color of deep ash and honey. His left paw dragged slightly as he walked, a small old injury she knew by heart. Eleanor rose slowly. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. He stood at the tree line, just like the mother had, but his posture was different, not guarded, not testing. He knew her, and when she whispered, "Ash?" he tilted his head. A sound escaped her lips, half laugh, half sob. She stepped forward, boots crunching soft snow, until she was just feet away. No fence, no leash, no years between them now. And then he sat, just like he used to. A silent, symbolic moment. The kind no camera could ever capture. Her hand hovered mid-air, afraid to touch, afraid to break the spell. But Ash leaned forward. His forehead brushed her chest, and for a moment they simply stood like that. Woman and bear, heart against heart, past against present. But behind him, movement. The mother bear emerged, slow, watching. Ash turned his head, looked at her, then looked back at Eleanor. A choice. He let out a low, gentle sound, not a growl, a note, a goodbye. And he turned. He didn't vanish into the woods like before. He walked slowly, beside his true mother, shoulder to shoulder, and once, before disappearing behind the trees, he looked back. Not lost, not torn, just thankful. Eleanor didn't cry. She smiled and whispered, "Go." She waited too. Spring came early that year. The river ran louder. The trees greened faster. Everything felt more alive, not louder, but deeper, as if the world had exhaled after a long-held breath. Eleanor didn't see them again. Not the mother, not Ash, but she didn't need to. Because each morning when she stepped outside, she noticed things that hadn't been there before. Scratches on the birch tree near the porch, wide, deliberate. Clumps of fur caught on bark. A patch of moss disturbed just beneath her window like something had laid there through the night, watching over her. Not haunting, honoring. Sometimes, late in the evening, she'd hear a low huff from deep within the woods, not close, not far, a sound like someone remembering her. She'd smile and whisper, "I remember you too." And one day, she took the old flannel shawl, the one Ash had always curled up against, and hung it on the fence post. She didn't know why, maybe as a gift, maybe as a marker, but it was gone the next morning. No tracks, no noise, just gone. She didn't cry, not this time. She just stood on the porch, breathed in the pine-sweet air, and smiled into the sunrise. Because some bonds aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to return, to grow, and to walk away when the time is right. She never raised a bear, she raised a goodbye, and somehow, that was enough. If this story touched your heart, let it live on. Share it with someone who believes animals never forget. And if you've ever been changed by a bond like this, tell us your story in the comments. We read every single one. Subscribe for more true stories of love, loss, and the wild hearts that find their way home.